Hello and welcome to the TelecomTV Summit on the Green Network. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and coming up now is our first roundtable of the summit, which aims to define the Green Network. So what do we mean by the Green Network? And in defining this, which areas come under most scrutiny? For example, how much emphasis is given to energy consumption as opposed to CO2 emissions? And what does this all mean for corporate strategies, operational processes, and investment cases? Well, let's find out what our guests think, and I am delighted to introduce Robert McCann, who is Head of Environment, Climate and Nature for Virgin Media O2, Anita Döhler, the Chief Executive Officer of NGMN, Lauren Ng, Managing Director, UK and Ireland Sustainability Services Lead at Accenture, Marie-Paule Odini, Distinguished Technologist with the Communications Technology Group at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Ana Maria Galindo Serrano, Telecoms Engineer at Orange Labs Networks and also the NGMN Project Co-Lead for its Green Future Networks, and Niall Robinson, who is Head of OpenSync Partnerships at Plume Design. Hello everyone, good to see you all. Thanks very much for taking part in our discussion today, which is our first roundtable of 2022. So let me start by simply asking, what do we mean by the Green Network? Robert, I wonder if we could get your views and the views of Virgin Media O2 on what we mean by the Green Network.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, sure. I guess if we think about it in the Virgin Media O2 context, we've got both a mobile network and a fixed line network providing cable services. We think about green network in three ways. So there's obviously energy consumption, there's where you're getting your energy from, so a renewables focus, and then thirdly, that those two things in the context of a carbon reduction strategy. I think to be considered a green network, those three things need to be working in tandem. So a plan to continue investing in energy efficiency and energy reduction, so delivering the increased demands on data and services in the most energy efficient way possible. Secondly, then to ensure that you're sourcing at a minimum renewable energy, so 100% renewable, and then bringing in on-site generation as well. And then thirdly, those two things sitting within that context of a net zero plan, so ultimately driving towards net zero emissions in line with what science requires. I think it's those three things are key to defining what a green network means.
Great, thanks very much for that, Robert. Anita, we know that NGMN, green is one of the three main work pillars that you're focused on currently. So you've been doing a lot of work in this area. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, what areas come under most scrutiny here? Now, how much emphasis do you give to energy consumption as opposed to CO2 emissions, for instance?
So first of all, energy consumption is directly linked to an operator's greenhouse gas emissions. So CO2 emissions are part of the greenhouse gas emissions, as we know. And it is not opposed. But I also believe that the definition of the green network goes beyond this. So we also need to consider actually any impact of the value chain on resources like land and water. So this is why also the eco-design of products is important to be considered here. Eco-design of products can reduce also energy consumption, can contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and also can help us to have a less negative impact on the quality of water and soil, for instance. And last but not least, also eco-design of products is related to the use of critical materials, which also have a huge impact on a huge environmental impact because of how they are depleted. But in addition, also they have an impact on the supply chain.
Thanks, Anita. Ana Maria, so do we need to approach energy reduction and emissions reduction in the same manner?
Yes, so as mentioned by Anita, there is no opposition between greenhouse gas emission and electricity consumption or energy consumption for operators, and they are quite linked because the majority of emissions of the operators come from what the energy they are consuming. So Yeah, for the time being, we need to focus on reducing the greenhouse gas emissions due to the climate emergency we are currently living, and that is why our strategies focus mostly in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and they are quite linked to electricity consumption, and therefore that will be directly impacted by the energy mix of the countries where the operators is working, right? So what we are seeing in our company strategies is that we prefer to expand more or to invest more on clean or renewable energy than in carbonized energy. But the main problem remains the availability of this kind of electricity. And this is something that we think that will not solve in the coming years. It's going to be worse and worse. And I would like to mention also that electricity consumption and the greenhouse gas emissions is a key point, but we are conscious and we are working a lot to improve other environmental impacts related to manufacturing and in influentiating the ecosystem to have cleaner manufacturing processes. So
Thank you for that, Anna Maria. What about our other guests? Any other thoughts on this first question about what we mean when we talk about the green network?
I think the only thing that I'd add, in particular, I think Richard's framework at the beginning was great, but there's also kind of a fourth bucket that we might start thinking about around how the network enables carbon reductions in other sectors as well. So actually the connectivity potential of the network through, we just mentioned manufacturing, for example, or through transport, can actually enable carbon reductions in those sectors as well. So not only within the network space, not only within potentially a comms and media space, but thinking broader than that into other sectors and identifying what sectors those might be and what those use cases might be, and then actually building on that carbon reduction potential as well.
Thanks so much, Lauren, for that. Well, I think we may have covered our definition of the green network. So why don't we move on? I'd like to ask this supplementary question, which is, once we've defined the green network, how do we make a green network measurable? Are there any agreed metrics or criteria that must be met to call our networks green? Anita, have you been doing any work on this area of metrics?
Yes, we did, and we will do going forward. So, first of all, the primary source of emissions in a network is the energy needed to operate the network. In our work we have done in NGMN in 2021, we pulled together a number of general environmental KPIs, and those are, for instance, the ratio of renewable energy, then the energy consumption per customer, the energy consumption per data volume, so energy intensity, but also the percentage of refurbished network equipment used in a network, and then the network carbon intensity. So those are general KPIs. Network can be measured with regards to its greenness, and for each part of the network there are standardized KPIs, for instance, by bodies like 3GPP, ETSI, but also ITU available. And going forward in NGMN in 2022, we will do a next step with regards to the benchmarking of green networks. So we will start to define methodologies and KPIs for a global green networks benchmarking, and you will hear more from us in 2022.
Good, look forward to that. Anna Maria, you'd like to follow up on what Anita's just said there?
Yes, please. So I just wanted to add that in the Green Future Networks project, we have been working in metering aspects. So the idea is to go further in the optimization process that we can have in the networks. And that is why we have been collecting metering solutions for operators in order for them to gather information at the equipment level, at technical site level, and to in order to be able to identify the more intensive, power-intensive areas or equipments, and then to optimize them. And the other target that we had in this work was to collect or set the basis for operators to use the existing protocols and communication architectures to extract information related, for example, to renewable on-site renewable electricity produced, specific equipment, power consumption, and other metrics such as temperature, humidity, etc. This is very important because with all these metrics, we could implement more advanced optimization systems for reducing the electricity consumed by the networks, to predict maintenance, and even to apply learning methods to continue optimizing the electricity consumed. So we are very happy with this work.
Okay, thanks very much. Marie-Paule, can we get some views on you on metrics and measurement then, please?
Yeah, exactly. So I would like to give two perspectives. One from the NextG Alliance, a Green G working group that I'm chairing. We just issued a white paper on Green G, and we highlight, all the aspects of green, like we've said, the CO2, the GHG, the water, the materials, and so on. And we're working on a new paper in 2022 that will focus on these KPIs. So mainly consolidating a whole bunch of KPIs which exist today, have been defined by different forums, but also maybe adding a few other KPIs to be able to go on the different layers of the network and also end-to-end to be able to cover, all the aspects of the network. The other angle is from the HP perspective, and here, as you know, we are providing metrics from our servers, and also we've worked very actively with the DMTF Redfish, and now we are working on the API with the Linux Foundation, Odini Open API. But we're also working on the management platforms to be able to collect the different metrics on the network and to do analytics on them, and to be able to help the operators optimize their networks. So there are, I think, lots of work going on in the industry, and it's also a matter of having the operators to actually implement some of the metrics that are available from the different sources.
So what kind of impact can these green network strategies have realistically on an operator's business, especially their OPEX? Anna Maria.
Yeah, so maybe to give a concrete example, during last year in 2020, we managed to save more than 170 million euros thanks to the implementation of these green features. And also, which I consider is very important, is that thanks to the implementation of these green features, we are able to control the growth of the electricity consumption of the networks despite the growth of the traffic consumption and the traffic in the networks.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thanks so much for that. And Robert, what from your company, what does it mean for your strategies?
So I think there's also a different perspective around driving OPEX, and particularly from a revenue perspective. We're seeing really significant increase in demand from our business customers, so B2B, in wanting to understand the impact of our network and our full end-to-end network and service on their own carbon footprint, so their Scope 3 emissions. So we're moving towards this phase where our business clients, and particularly in the public sector, are wanting to have a measurable understanding of our input to their Scope 3 and the steps that we're taking to reduce it. So that's actually underpinning revenue and winning of contracts, which brings a whole new element to that understanding of a green network strategy and the impact it can have commercially to the business.
Oh, that's very interesting, Robert. Thanks very much for that. Lauren, is this something you see at Accenture as well? This kind of like pull through that Robert's been talking about from customers, operators, customers, wanting more evidence and to find out more about their green network credentials?
Yeah, I'm nodding my head vigorously in terms of exactly what was just said of finding out kind of everyone's scope 1 and 2 emissions are someone's scope 3 emissions, or your direct emissions from a network are the scope 3 emissions of someone else's. So I think there's that huge potential. And then linking actually back to what I'd said earlier, the development of new use cases, particularly when we start thinking about next generation technologies, for example, new uses of IoT or 5G, and really the opportunities there with those technologies to drive entirely new business models or new ways of working for some of those B2B customers. And I think that provides an opportunity in terms of B2B carbon reductions, or how to enable those for other sectors, for companies like Virgin Media O2 or Orange or others to start looking at new opportunities for growth and actually driving sustainable revenues. And I think that's a fundamentally unique position of network operators, really being that kind of linchpin and underpinning so many of our technologies, and how our technologies are only growing fundamentally, and data traffic and data use is only increasing. But how can we then tie the increase in data traffic and data use to actually an increase in carbon reductions as well, and the network provider being in a unique place to be able to do that whilst driving revenue growth as well.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Anita, NGMN has a very significant operator membership, a huge membership from operators. So what does this all mean, do you think, for corporate strategies and operational processes and investment cases?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, energy efficiency is a key point to reduce the investments in carbon sinks, and therefore it's a key focus for operators, how to improve energy efficiency. I also believe that when it comes to the implementation strategies and operational processes, we know that already in the 5G standardization, so the 5G as a standard already contains a lot of opportunities to save energy, but we also know that not everything is implemented. And naturally, it takes time from a standard being approved to the implementations. That's clear. But it also seems that there are some other obstacles operators are facing in implementing those features. And I believe it's probably worth also an industry effort to understand and to analyze what are those obstacles and what is needed to remove them. And maybe they are also related to operational processes. The third point here is that, of course, also referring to Ara's keynote, that the buying processes of operators should also contain criteria with regards to sustainability. So in the case that a vendor or supplier, vendors or suppliers are equal in the other required features, there should be a difference made with regards to meeting sustainability criteria by vendors. I think all this together, of course, has an impact on the strategies, on operational processes, on supply chain processes of our operator membership. And of course, also an impact on vendors.
Thanks, Anita. Niall, let me bring you into the discussion now. How do you think telcos should think about home and office networks and CPE when formulating their environmental and green network strategies?
Yes, of course, good question. We see a lot of the operators out there looking at their customer premise equipment and determining, okay, when do I have to maybe upgrade my equipment if I want to deliver some new service or some faster speeds. And what we've focused at with Plume, we move a lot of the intelligence to manage that equipment into the cloud. Our cloud, I think, is managing, I don't know, tens of millions of homes today and over 1 billion client devices like the laptop I'm talking to you on right now. And by moving that intelligence to the cloud and being able to offer new services on that existing equipment, that existing gateway that's in your home, we can actually extend the life cycle of that equipment. Typically, customers will want to replace it perhaps every 2 to 3 years, to get the latest box. By pushing services to that box from the cloud, effectively we call it upcycling that device by allowing it to stay in the home for 5, 6, 7 years and happily delivering new services, whether it's security, whether it's parental controls or more advanced services, an operator can effectively reduce the impact on the environment by not disposing of so many old devices, extending the abilities of their supply chain to sort of more efficiently operate their network. We've seen it now with quite a few operators that we're working with, devices that they normally would have taken out of service to upgrade to a new box, are now still happily serving customers and extending the life cycle of that hardware.
Thank you, Niall. Robert, does this resonate with your strategies and what you want to achieve in these environments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the home office piece is really important, and we've all seen over the last couple of years with the pandemic that we've all had to move to work from home, and ultimately the CPE that we provide and our peers do as well has enabled people in their millions across the country to work from home. So actually that speaks to that enablement effect of our products and the network that was mentioned earlier. So the potential and the enablement effect of our network and those products is huge, and should be bigger than the impact of our network itself. But that doesn't mean that you can't ignore the impact of that CPE. And when you look at the full value chain impact, scopes 1 to 3 of a business like ours, clearly our products are one of, if not the biggest part of the footprint. So we have to, within the context of a net zero plan, have serious plans in place to be reducing the emissions, embedded emissions, and the use phase emissions of those products in line with, again, what's required and with the science. So we've got to look at both those things as the impact of the CP itself, but also the positive benefit of that product in terms of the enablement effect.
Great, thanks, Robert. Lauren, you're nodding away there to what Robert and Niall have been saying. I think there's obviously still scope for a lot of work to be done in this environment. Yeah,
completely agree. Thank you. I think agree with everything that's said, and I think provides also an opportunity for network providers and the CP itself to start thinking about actually transitioning towards a more circular economy. So what we would call kind of moving from a linear economy, or the take, make, waste, into a kind of take, make approach, but thinking about actually how that CPE can be reused. And I think we talked about it earlier in terms of the inputs into those devices itself, and starting to think through what some of that might mean. E-waste is an enormous problem that we're facing globally within the climate emergency. And actually, I think it's an area that potentially network operators have focused more so on the carbon side, potentially, than some of the end of use look at CPE equipment as well. And so demonstrates an opportunity to really start thinking about not just the energy use or the carbon emissions from that CPE alone, but then as you look to or get a new device in 2 to 3 years, as was mentioned, what happens to your old device? What do you do with it? How is it used? How is it disposed of or recycled? We're seeing some exciting new opportunities and new business models kind of spring up in that space, and I think provides an opportunity to start exploring what those could be for network operators as well.
Great, thanks. Good points there. Marie-Paule, did you want to come in and comment on the question of the CPE and the home work networks?
Yeah, definitely to use CPE as an example, of how virtualization has changed the game to be more sustainable and have more efficient processes. When we introduced virtualization, virtual CPE was one of the first use cases to give flexibility to the operators, to upgrade easily with just software upgrade and so on, and avoid changing the box and so on. And this has been, I think, one of the first use cases where we started to be a bit more green with CPE than we used to be. And this model can now apply to other parts of the network. So it's been applied now to the core network as much as possible. And it's now moving to the RAN. And with virtualization, we can, definitely save some of the, change of hardware and upgrades and reduce the amount of materials that we have to renew in the network and have much more flexibility.
Thank you. And Anna Maria?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for operators, reducing the CPE impact is very important because this accounts for our Scope 3 indicator, and that the manufacturing process represents around 80% for a mobile device. So we are developing strong campaigns, and we are working a lot for our clients to keep their mobile phones as long as possible, to repair them, to bring them back, and to improve our recycling method. So we are working a lot on this area because it's very important, as the CO2 emission for manufacturing is quite high. So we need to keep them, or try our clients to keep them as much as possible. Yeah.
Thanks. And Robert, let me come back to you.
Yeah, just I guess on that point around, particularly around handsets, I think this is where there's a great opportunity to drive customer engagement and actually present customers with a choice. So this is where things like the eco rating scheme in the mobile industry is really important, because it's defining the environmental impact and then measuring the environmental impact of those products, those handsets, and then presenting that information to customers at the point of sale. I think there's a really great opportunity for network businesses that are customer facing to provide a choice to customers, and then ultimately drive change throughout the industry, throughout the supply chain, with customers choosing to purchase the greenest products.
Thanks, Robert. Well, thanks everyone for those responses. There's a lot of focus at the moment on AI and automation. Do we think that perhaps there are AI tools that can play a key role in helping telcos with their green network strategies? Any thoughts about the potential use of AI, or even the current use of AI in networks to further these aims? Is this a viable approach?
Yeah. Maybe I can give some examples of what we are doing. So we are looking to AI very closely because the potential is huge in terms of energy efficiency and energy consumption reduction in the network. So to give concrete examples, we are using it or exploring it to reduce the energy consumption of the network itself, but we are also deploying use cases in order to discover or to have models to predict maintenance, to improve or optimize the billing system, to optimize the network configuration. And we are even applying AI techniques at the technical side level to reduce the energy consumption for cooling systems, for example. So this is a very interesting area where there is a lot of potential.
Thank you, Anna Maria. And Niall?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, as I mentioned before, right, we use the cloud to manage the home network, and we use AI up in the cloud to manage all of those Wi-Fi connections that are in your home. And we've done some studies now with some of our larger operators, and bringing that cloud-based intelligence. You've basically got as much compute power as you want and as much intelligence as you want to bring to the problem of managing a Wi-Fi network. We've actually seen our operator customers reduce their truck rolls, right? So putting somebody into a van and actually driving that van out to a customer's home to fix their issue. We've actually seen that drop by over 2/3, which is actually a significant impact on their environmental impact with the number of truck rolls that they used to have to do to fix customer issues. So giving those advanced tools for the cloud to control the network and advanced tools for insights into the home to help solve those customer issues without actually having to put somebody in a van and burn a bunch of carbon fuel to get to somebody's home has actually really improved their operations carbon footprint.
Yeah, I bet it has. Thanks for that, Niall. Good comment. Now I wonder, can 5G networks ever be considered as green networks? I mean, when we first started talking about 5G in the standards process, this was one of the considerations for lower energy usage of the network equipment. But is it a case of maybe we're going to have to wait until the next evolution of cellular to really design equipment and infrastructure that is specifically orders of magnitude lower energy usage and greener. Can we regard 5G as a green network, or even as a net contributor to the green network? Any thoughts on the role of 5G here? Anna Maria, thank you. Let's have some thoughts from you.
So I think what we need to understand for 5G is that it's the first standard that was conceived since the beginning to include advanced green features, right? So this is something that is very important and that will certainly be included for next generations of networks. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that from efficiency perspective, 5G has bring a lot of gains, and these methods or technologies or techniques will be also source of inspirations for other generations. And what we are seeing in the standards and in the standards to come is that we are making a lot of efforts to go forward with these green features, right, in 5G or for next generation. So I think we are in the path to have 5G networks that could be optimized in terms of energy consumption even more in the coming years, where we will have more powerful switch of techniques, sharing techniques, and aggregation techniques. So I think 5G doesn't solve all the problems, but it's a good start point, and is the first generation that is giving importance to these topics. In previous generations, green came after design, right? So it's not optimal. And in 5G, the green was at the core of the design of the technology. So it gives hope for coming generations.
Yeah, and as you say, we're right at the start of 5G. There are more specification releases still to come before we even talk about 6G. Now, Lauren, I'll come to you in a second, but Robert, let me come to you first.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, a couple of things, I guess, with 5G and the rollout across the network. So I think this is also where AI can come in. So AI can help to manage those network sites to reduce energy consumption or to increase energy efficiency. So there's a big role for AI there. We've shown in O2 that we've been able to increase the energy efficiency of the network sites by 82% since 2015, despite that rollout of 5G. So it is possible to, with the right measures in place, things like free air cooling, and the right measurement and monitoring software, that you can continue to increase energy efficiency despite the rollout of 5G. And then again, this is where that enablement effect comes in. So we have to think about 5G in the context of the wider benefits that it delivers and all the different use cases. And I think as long as we are delivering those benefits at scale, then it's possible to think about 5G in that wider ecosystem, and not just purely about the energy use within the network.
Great, thank you, Robert. And Lauren?
Robert stole most of what I was going to say, but I was going to just build on actually his original framework and add my fourth bucket in. But from the energy efficiency and consumption perspective, 5G can be more efficient, and it obviously depends on the build out. So really using that design principle from the get-go is important. Still thinking about the consumption and what type of electricity we're using, and then potentially backup generation. So making sure that the network, whether 4G or 5G or fixed, really runs off of renewables, and ensuring that can happen as a network-wide opportunity. Thinking about how 5G fits into an overall operators or otherwise corporate net zero strategy, and then thinking about those new opportunities. We've done some work at Accenture thinking about kind of what new use cases are enabled by 5G that wouldn't be possible without 5G, that couldn't happen on 4G or below. And I think the number of use cases there are there's many of them, and actually the potential there for carbon reduction through those use cases is often sizable as well. So I think rather than just only thinking about the individual technology or an individual rollout, but thinking about that technology within the much wider context of the operator or within a wider net zero strategy is quite important.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And Marie-Paule?
Yeah, I would add also that 5G is probably the first generation that is really thinking green, energy efficiency, and the design is into the 3GPP specs, which are adding lots of new features, as mentioned by Anna Maria. There's all the sleep mode and so on. The RAN has been really optimized. And then, generally speaking, there is cloud native virtualization that is by design in 5G now. So as soon as, operators will have deployed standalone networks, because today, still a number of them have not deployed the 5G core, then it will be much more efficient than 4G for sure. And AI that is started to be introduced will also help to get more automation and towards more zero touch and really optimization of the resources and scale on demand and really have a much more efficient use of the network. There are a number of new use cases also. We are exploring one, for instance, with the network data analytics component that is in the core network, which is to track the location of the devices to optimize the paging. And operators know that, paging is quite energy consuming. And so with AI, we could optimize that. So there's, I think, still lots of opportunities to, to deploy what has been specified and with the current technologies, and maybe also enhance that before getting 6G, because we still have a few years before we get 6G. So we have to really optimize anything we can optimize with what we have, because as everybody knows, the IPCC report was pretty clear. We need to do things concretely before 2030. If we just wait for 2030, then we have little chance to remain below 1.5 or 2 degrees. So this is becoming quite critical.
Yes, it certainly is, and we are running out of time. Talking of time, we've got time for one more question in this session. We set out to define the green network. So how do we then build on this? What do we do next? We've heard from you what's happening now and some ideas and what to expect, but let's get a bit specific here. And let's start with Anita and NGMN's work in this area. What comes next for you? What do you and your members plan for 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, so what we plan for sure is to develop common methodologies for the end-to-end environmental footprint calculation of services. So in our work in 21, our teams acknowledge that actually this is a very complex topic, how to come up with common methodologies in this area. And at the same time, it's an extremely important topic to have awareness of. So we will spend more work to come up with common methodologies in the end-to-end service footprint calculation. On top of that, what I already mentioned, our big topic to develop standards, de facto standards for the green benchmarking of networks. Those are the two big buckets. And then in addition, of course, we will also continue to look into the energy consumption of disaggregated networks. That's another important area. We will do further work on the use of critical materials, eco-design of products, and last but absolutely not least, on new business models. So develop compendiums of new business models. It was already spoken about this in a session today, that we need to talk about repairability of devices, reuse of devices, and all this comes together also to new business models of operators.
Thank you, Anita. Plenty of work there to look forward to this year. Anna Maria.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in this second phase of the Green Future Network project, we want to continue working on the energy efficiency of the networks. For example, we will look to what is being done in 3GPP release 18, and to put all these features together in order to be able to estimate the energy consumption of the end-to-end network. Once these features have been activated, we also want to look to the supply chain risks. As for the years to come, the risk factors may increase. Just to recall, the risk factors of the supply chain are the scarcity, geopolitical problems, the demand, the environmental impact, and social impact, etc. So, as you can imagine, this is not close to be solved, and we think that this be worst for the coming year, so we need to be prepared. We also would like to go forward in the environmental impact analysis, as mentioned by Anita before. So we want to start looking closely to water footprint, for example, and water and soil pollution, because after greenhouse gas emission reports, we think we will have to start reporting on these topics. And just to give last example, for concrete collaboration between members of the project. For example, at Orange, we have a green platform where we can test green solutions, and the idea is to open this platform for our partners to come and test and do kind of proof of concepts, and we are really looking forward for that.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Let me come across to Niall next.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, a couple of areas that that we're going to be focusing on in 2022, actually also 2023. We use a technology called OpenSync, which is a software that sits on that CPE that's in your home and allows it to be controlled by the cloud. And so today we use that, as I mentioned, for optimizing the Wi-Fi in your home, extending the life, if you like, the broadband life of that equipment. A couple of areas that we're going to focus on extending OpenSync, and one is in the IoT space. So we are members of Matter, which is a kind of a large-scale group now that is creating a more standardized way to manage the IoT devices in your home. It could be anything from your fridge to your washing machine to your light bulbs and everything else. So by integrating Matter with OpenSync, we feel like we can bring all of the AI capabilities that we brought to the Wi-Fi network to the IoT space, improving energy efficiency. And then the other area that we're focused on, we just talked about 5G. And we have a lot of devices that we manage that have not just a Wi-Fi connection, but also have a network connection, right? Whether it's LTE or 5G. And we feel like, again, extending OpenSync to bring those two connectivity domains closer together will enable us to sort of drive a more efficient way of delivering bandwidth to those devices. So not always relying on the 5G network, and perhaps not always relying on the Wi-Fi network, but driving the most efficient way to create that connection for your device. So a couple of areas where we want to expand the capabilities of OpenSync, which we feel will just continue the story of improving the overall network operations and reducing the energy footprint and the management footprint. Great,
thank you, Niall. Well, I think we may well have reached the end of the show, unless any of our other guests want to have some final comments there. I would say we should leave it here for now. We'll pick up on any outstanding issues in our live after show program, which is later today. So thank you all very much for participating and sharing your views with us today. And if you are watching this on day one of our TelecomTV Summit on the Green Network, then don't forget, send us your questions and we'll try and answer as many as we can in our live after show program. As I said, that's later today. And please do take part in our online poll, which you can find below this video player window, right next to that Q&A app. For now though, thank you for watching and goodbye.